Not everything that finds its way into the water finds its way back out again. Our seas and oceans can be very unforgiving places, and so can our lakes and rivers if we catch them at the wrong time. The world's waters have become repositories of lost items both large and small. Some of them will stay down there beneath the waves forever, but others are eventually found decades, centuries, or even thousands of years after they sank. Those discovery stories are always interesting, so let's tell them. Almost 100 years ago, a historic train was dumped in the Oreti River in Southland, New Zealand. In January 2020, the remains of the 135-year-old locomotive were finally brought back to dry land. The V-class steam engine was tipped into the river in 1927 after being declared obsolete. There were protests about the controversial decision to dump the train at the time, and many attempts were made to raise it again in the years that followed. By the time this January 2020 attempt succeeded, most people had long since given up the idea as a lost cause. The reason the train is held in such high regard is that it's the only fully intact locomotive of its kind left in the country. They were once a common sight in New Zealand in the early years of the 20th century, where they were used for both passengers and freight, but were dropped in favor of newer models and either scrapped or used for other purposes. In the case of this one, it was supposed to be a flood defense. Even though it's been in a muddy riverbed for over a century, the train is in such good condition that its wheels span freely as it was lifted out by a crane. When a diver came across this scene in May 2015, he was initially horrified. In fact, he was so convinced that he'd accidentally stumbled upon a crime scene that he contacted the police. Fortunately, no crimes have been committed here. The scene of skeletons wearing sunglasses and sitting on garden chairs while apparently enjoying a tea party is actually an underwater art installation. The skeletons are still there today at the bottom of the Colorado River close to La Paz, Arizona, although they've decayed badly since this footage was shot in 2015. The skeletons aren't real, and there's no crime for the police to investigate. One of the skeletons holds a sign in its bony hands which reads a message, "Bernie, dream in the river." We're not sure whether Bernie is the name of the skeleton, the name of the artist, or a reference to failed Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. The artist helpfully included a date on the sign, August 16, 2014. Nobody has ever come forward to claim the art installation as their own, possibly because they're afraid they might face criminal charges for dumping things in the river. More than 30 years ago, the town of Potosi in Venezuela was intentionally drowned as part of a project to dam a nearby river. Now the waters are slowly receding, and the surviving structures of the old town are becoming visible once more. The most poignant of them is the drowned church, the spire of which was never fully below the waterline. There are photos of the top of the church poking out above the water from as long ago as 1985, but in 2008, sailors on the lake close to the Urabante Reservoir started to notice more of the church becoming visible on a month-to-month basis. During a particularly dry spell in 2010, the lake dried up almost completely, revealing the bare bones of the formerly magnificent Gothic church and the remains of the stone structures that once surrounded it. The profound effects of water erosion have almost completely destroyed the remains of every other building in Potosi, with nothing left of the former homes of the townspeople. Looking at it, you could easily believe that it was abandoned long before the creation of the nearby hydroelectric power facility in 1984. The finding of an astrolabe is always a big deal for archaeologists. The complicated pieces of ancient machinery were used for navigation, but also worked as a functional model of the known universe as it appeared to the people who made them, including the means to track the movement of celestial bodies through the sky. One such device was recovered from the Viviera estuary in northwestern Spain in October 2021. It's the 108th astrolabe to be found and recorded, and was made somewhere between 1575 and 1622. The shipwreck that it came from might be the San Bartolome, a galleon that's known to have sunk in the area in 1597. Archaeologists say that it's easily among the top 10 best preserved artifacts of its kind. The owner of a marine astrolabe could calculate the position of their ship by aligning the rod on its circular base with the position of the sun, or if they were sailing at night, the position of a known star. Each astrolabe is thought to have been handcrafted for its owner and represents the pinnacle of navigational technology during that era. In 2013, a video of an unknown creature roaming the depths of the Indian Ocean, more than 3,000 feet below sea level, went viral on the internet. Nobody was ever able to determine what the creature was. In March 2021, the video somehow went viral for a second time. Again, the internet scrambled to find someone who could identify the strange creature, but nobody's had any luck so far. The creature drifts into view looking like a runic symbol or an alien from a video game. Seemingly approaching the remotely operated underwater camera out of curiosity, as it gets closer, it shrinks into a ball shape and then completely changes form, fanning out into a shape some observers have compared to the top of a lemon squeezer. The total body transformation is an impressive trick, but the creature then goes one step further and puts on a rainbow light display. Unfortunately, it was the last thing the unknown creature ever did. It got caught in the jets of the vehicle and was torn to shreds. It's such a weird-looking thing that many people have accused the video of being fake, but it isn't. It's a genuine reminder that we have very little knowledge of the life forms that exist at those depths. Some people suggested that the creature in the video we've just seen was an alien. That reminded us of another story, the tale of an alien that was discovered at the bottom of the Black Sea, close to the coast of Anapa, Russia, in September 2017. This isn't a genuine extraterrestrial, though. It's an homage to the iconic xenomorph character from Ridley Scott's Alien movies. And it's made out of disused car parts. The sculpture was made by artists in the United Kingdom, but was based directly on blueprints from H.R. Giger, who designed the iconic character for the first Alien movie in 1979. The purpose of installing the sculpture here was to persuade tourists to come and scuba dive so they can grab a picture with the alien. So far, that strategy has proven to be a success. The owners of a nearby dive site are now hoping to expand their collection of figures. In fact, they one day hope to have a whole underwater tourist complex in the area. They haven't said what they plan to include in the complex, but we wouldn't be surprised to see more movie characters. Let's give ourselves another reminder of how much more there is to learn about the creatures who live in our oceans. German diver Lucas Ostertag was diving with friends in the Red Sea close to the Sataya Reef just off the Egyptian coast when he encountered this strange sight in November 2021. It's immediately apparent that the tube-shaped object, which appears to be a life form, has no mouth, ears, or eyes. However, it does have a dangerous-looking claw at the tip of its body. The 23-year-old managed to swim alongside the creature and described its skin as being rubbery. Lucas is well-versed in marine life, so his first thought was that he might have come across a soft-bodied organism known as a polyp. When he put his pictures on social media, he heard from other people who thought it might be a plant or a sea worm. There's another possibility here, though. This might be the arm of a very large jellyfish. Jellyfish can be dangerous, but they're also prone to becoming dinner for sea turtles. If a sea turtle had recently been through this area, it might have eaten the jellyfish and left nothing behind but the arm. The Great Barrier Reef in Australia is famous all over the world. It's always attracted tourists, but it's attracted even more since the opening of a museum of underwater art close to the reef in 2020. All of the sculptures and structures that make up the underwater art gallery were designed and built by world-renowned artist Jason de Caires Taylor, who worked with scientists at the Australian Institute of Marine Science to ensure the materials used in his work wouldn't pose a threat to the reef or the local marine life. The works include 20 reef guardian sculptures inside a 40-foot-long sculpture called the Marine Greenhouse. The location of the gallery is visible above the waves thanks to a large statue known as the Ocean Siren. The figure depicted at the top of the Ocean Siren's plinth is modeled on a 12-year-old girl called Dakota Johnson, who's a member of the indigenous Woolgoorukaba people. Her statue is actually a smart statue. It's connected to the Davis Reef Weather Station and changes color in response to shifts in the temperature of the ocean. There are many wine tours available to visitors and wine enthusiasts in Croatia, but none quite like this one. Just off the country's Dalmatian coast and about 75 feet below sea level, you'll find the Edivo Winery. It's the first and so far only underwater winery in the world. The winery has been created inside a shipwreck at the bottom of the Adriatic, not far from the tiny village of Drace, and has been in business since 2011. Aside from being the first winery in the world to be granted a license to age wine beneath the sea, it's also the world's only winery to have an active license to sell wine in amphora. This is how the ancient Romans and Greeks stored and sold their wine thousands of years ago, and the Edivo Winery has decided that if it was good enough for them, it's good enough for us. The winery's experts are convinced that aging the wine this way gives it a unique flavor that can't be obtained via any other method. Each bottle stays down there for 2 years before it's brought back to the surface to be sold. The business is a success, so its owners might have a point. Although all of us are familiar with the concept of writing a message in a bottle and throwing it out to sea, very few of us have ever created such a message, and even fewer of us have ever found one. They do turn up occasionally, though, and one turned up at the bottom of the Sheboygan River in Michigan, USA in June 2021. It was found and opened by boat captain Jennifer Dowker when she sailed across the river in her glass-bottomed boat. After diving down to retrieve the bottle, she discovered a note inside dated November 1926. It asks whoever finds it to return it to George Morrow of Sheboygan and tell him where it was found. As it turns out, the bottle traveled very little distance, but did stay in the water for a very long time. Jennifer posted pictures of her discovery to her Facebook page and got an emotional phone call within days from a woman called Michelle Primo. Her father, George Morrow, passed away in 1995, but she recognized his handwriting. The note was his, and he'd written it as a child. It's finally found its way back home. The coastlines of Europe have changed dramatically over the past 1,000 years. Most of Europe was once connected by a land area known as Doggerland, which made it possible for hunter-gatherers to walk from the coast of Norfolk in England all the way to Germany. Doggerland was eventually flooded by the North Sea and disappeared beneath the waves, breaking the land connection and creating the British Isles by cutting the islands off from the rest of Europe. In December 2013, a huge storm off the east coast of England shifted layers of sediment beneath the water and revealed the presence of one of Doggerland's old forests. There are countless trees and bushes down in the depths, all of which might have been hidden for up to 10,000 years. The forest is interesting, but marine archaeologists believe that there might be far more interesting things than trees hidden in the forest. This land would likely have been occupied, and there could be artifacts, human burials, and other discoveries to be made by digging into it. The only problem is that digging up land that's already underwater is easier said than done. Amazon founder and former CEO Jeff Bezos is a man with a keen interest in spaceflight. He recently fired William Shatner of Star Trek fame into space and has further flights planned for the future. But he's as interested in the history of spaceflight as he is in the future. In 2013, a privately funded expedition paid for by Bezos retrieved one of the most important space rocket engines in human history from the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. This is a booster engine from a Saturn V rocket, the type that sent Apollo astronauts to the moon. Sonar detectors located the F-1 type engine on the floor of the Atlantic in 2012, but finding it and extracting it are two very different things. The rocket is 20 feet tall, 15 feet wide, and weighs almost a ton. Worse than that, it was 2.5 miles below sea level. It took 3 weeks of effort to get the engines back up to the surface, but the mission was successful. Unfortunately, it will probably never be possible to prove which Apollo mission the engine came from. Bezos hopes that it came from the Apollo 11 mission, the first to successfully reach the moon. But it's unlikely he'll ever know for sure. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.